Namaste. I'm Master Colleen Inman, and in this video, we will be looking at Bhujangasana or Cobra pose. Now, Bhujangasana and Cobra pose is an often misaligned posture that ends up with a low back pain or discomfort lasting a couple of days. This is from the misalignment or the misunderstanding of the particular posture. So let's see if we can look through Bhujangasana and have it be a successful and comfortable posture. Here we go. So from Cobra pose or to Cobra pose, we're going to start working on the front body on the belly. Now, if you are pregnant, this posture would not be for you, especially past the first trimester. You might be able to do it during the first trimester as long as you don't have any complications or conditions where you can't put pressure on the belly. After that, it's simply just the size of the belly tends to be too much or too uncomfortable. I can show you a variation in here that can be done to help create some space, and you might be able to do it a little bit longer. But even if you get past the discomfort of the space of the belly, then you're going to get into the problematic portion where the weight of the belly is going to pull on the low spine. So it's probably not going to be a posture you're going to do for a long time in the pregnancy or directly after birth. So those are a couple of things that we should know about. Spine conditions, I'm going to give you a few alterations or a few methods in which you can modify your posture to help with some of those conditions. Okay, so here let's just simply start with the basic of Cobra or Bhujangasana. So I'm going to start reclined onto the belly. I can start with the hands in a Sphinx pose, and I'm going to start with the feet, okay? Ideally, not curled under. That would be for an upward facing dog. Here we're doing Cobra pose. So a cobra, a snake, pushes up by pushing down, or comes up by pushing down. So I'm going to be pushing and activating in the legs to raise up with the front body. Here, what I have to do is I have to get the thigh bone to turn inward. There's a tendency for the thigh to come out. You'll see the knee is facing outward, but I actually have to get the head of the femur bone to turn in the hip socket, like I'm rolling the thigh bone in. And then I'll flatten the foot directly onto the mat. Try and get that pinky toe down onto the floor as well as the front of the ankle. Tricky depending on your body. Repeat that on the other leg. So pick up the leg, turn the thigh bone inward. This opens the low sacrum. This is probably one of the biggest misalignments, is we don't turn those thigh bones in, so they compress on the low sacrum, and there's no room for that tailbone to descend. So toes push down onto the floor. Second is lifting the core. So here I'm going to try and do this with my head down facing the mat. But the idea is, can I keep my forehead on the mat, but lift my belly button or navel from the floor? This is going to engage the core and root the tailbone. So if I have the hands placed properly, just outside the chest, if I need to, I can bring them forward or I can bring them back. But ideally, the hands are planted well. The shoulders are rolling onto the back and engaged as though I'm squeezing a beach ball behind the back. Feet are pressing. Now here I'm just going to practice. I'll show you a couple of times. Lifting just the navel off the floor, keeping the forehead down. This core work lifts the low belly and tilts the tailbone. I'm going to keep that action. Now I'm going to draw the heart forward and up and around. So I'm going to push the hands down. Try to press the feet down. Toes roll outward. Elbows come in. Shoulder blades slide down. Chest comes forward. And release. Here I'm going to come up, work on a couple of variations. So let's say I have low back pain. And the two variations for this could be, one, as long as I'm not pregnant, I can take this blanket and put it directly under the low ribs. This will feel supportive and helpful. Pressing the feet down, nothing really changes. The blanket's ultimately acting as that navel to spine energy. I'm going to press the tailbone down, engage the core, use that blanket, then begin to come up and come forward. Now you'll see my feet are pretty far apart, and you'll see in some poses, yoga postures, or Bhujangasana, where they want the feet pretty close together. You can take them apart till you get the posture well and the low back feeling good. Then you can bring the feet closer. Here, I'll show you a third variation. I'm going to use blocks for this one. We grab a couple blocks. Here, the blocks are going to be set in front of the thighs. This is going to be similar as the blanket on the low ribs, but this could be done, say, towards the end of the first trimester if you're pregnant, or if somebody has pretty extreme low back concerns, but kind of wants to try the posture anyway. So again, we're going to try and work on healing that low spine before we aggravate it or push it into a more developed posture. So make sure you go mindfully with that. Here, this is going to push the thigh bones back into the hip socket. That femur bone pushing back into the sacroiliac crest, or the back of the hip socket, is where it's going to have a good resting point, and it's not going to agitate the front of the hip socket pressing on the front of the psoas. So we want to make sure that thigh bone stays back. These blocks are a great way to ensure that. So if I were to start my pose, laying, I could even just start right here. Laying, you'll see the top of the block is at the top of the thigh crease. And that's going to automatically be pushing the thigh bone back up into the hip. It's going to give me a lot of freedom and room to move about in that low sacrum. As I inhale and come up, that low back feels pretty free. The thighs are pushing back, of course, still rolling inward. And I have room without compressing in the low back or the low spine. So those are variations for your Cobra pose or your Bhujangasana. Try it slowly. Make sure you work with rolling the thighs inward. Make sure you root, lifting the low belly, dropping that tailbone, pressing the feet down. Keeping all of those actions, very important, keep all of those. Then begin to lift up and forward and open with the heart, but only after the foundation is in place. Questions, comments, feel free to put them in the below. Otherwise, thank you for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Namaste.